Now to who I understand is the most senior legislator. Shawn Mitchell is a fellow state senator from District 23, which is the Rumfelt area. He's on the Business, Labor, and Technology Committee, as well as the Health and Human Services Committee. Shawn has got a son who's a nationally ranked wrestler at American University. I finally got that university right. Shawn himself is a rock climber and wrestles, so I believe, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, he will take on any challenge. John, how are things going down there?
Well, I think Ted summed it up. It's tough down there, and one of the advantages of batting later in the lineup is that you can clean up a couple issues. I hate to correct people, but Dave got one of the key details wrong in his joke about the homeless person healing the different people. When he touched the libertarian, it was a brain that miraculously appeared. I was surprised at the importance that Don put on parliamentary procedure in the legislature. When I was a new House member, I was kind of struck too by the formality and thank you, Madam Chair, and yes, may I, and going through the chair on things. The biggest improvement that parliamentary procedure made in my life is raising 7 children. Dinner time was a lot more peaceful and quiet. If you sat through more committee meetings, that would.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To him.
To him. Today, sorry, a couple other quick notes. I'm surprised to hear more mention of birth certificates, and I thought maybe we had left that counterproductive debate behind. At this point, I think we need to get over the stale argument over which country the president came from, and looking at some of the stuff that's coming out of the White House, we need to get a clear fix on what planet he came from. After we figured that out, we need to debate the policies on their merits, not argue the zip code of birth, because no one cares. If we can't beat this president opposing his policies, then we don't deserve our turn at governing. When I say no one cares, I don't mean that it's not important. I think there are people that care and there are people that should care, but politically it is a losing, self-defeating issue. And not that Chris was seriously raising it, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Now this is billed as a halftime discussion, but I think even more critical than what the score is at halftime is the doubt that the next season is cast into. You see, the salary for legislators hasn't increased in the 13 years that I've been there, and talks between agents for the lawmakers and agents for the homeowners have broken down. And there was an announcement last night that there's going to be a lockout at the Capitol, and angry legislators are swarming taxpayers' homes saying, pay us more, pay us more. And when that gets sorted out, then maybe there will be another session, but until then, we'll have to content ourselves watching high school debate. Couple quick observations about the legislature itself. It would be nice to have a majority in all chambers and the governor's office, but having even just one chamber, having a Republican control of the House makes all the difference. All of the terrible stuff that has poured through for the last several years and just pushed Colorado further and further to the left, at least that flood has stopped. Slowed or stopped. Yeah. So right now in this session, a lot of action is going to happen between the 40-yard lines. Nothing is going to go too far to the right, or it'll die in the Senate, and nothing's going to go too far to the left, or it'll die in the House. Which is not to say that we necessarily have a reliable conservative or limited government majority in the House. Interesting, next point I would make is there's really a different personality between the Republican caucus in the Senate and the Republican caucus in the House. Chris and Don not being typical of this trend, but I would say that the Senate Republicans are more aligned with the grassroots, Tea Party, liberty, small government movement, and the House Republicans would be a little bit more in line with the Chamber of Commerce, 17th Street, kind of mainstream, traditional establishment Republican policies. Those are generalizations, and there are exceptions in both chambers, but it's interesting the kind of difference between the two. And so there will be things get through the process and get through the House that would have died if the House Republicans were a little bit more like the Senate Republicans. Another interesting matchup or tension to keep your eye on, Ted alluded to, is the relationship between the Democrats in the legislature and Governor Hickenlooper. His budget proposal was surprisingly reasonable, and the reaction of legislative Democrats, particularly Senate Democrats, was pretty much a tantrum. And it'll be interesting to see what they do when it comes time to actually pass a balanced budget. One or two more points. For the foreseeable future, the dominant theme in state politics will be scarcity of revenues and politicians trying to find more revenues, and either do it without passing formal tax increases by creative fee renaming and sneaky fee establishment, or over the Raleigh-Heath frontal, let's propose a tax increase, and I look forward to that debate with relish. A couple more things to be said, but maybe it'll come out in Q&A. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you for taking some time out of your Saturdays to participate in self-government. And I just finally want to echo what we've heard a number of times. We need you to hold us accountable. The people at this table will probably need less reminder and encouragement than some of our colleagues, but don't think your work is done because you've elected Republicans or Libertarians or people that talk like limited government politicians. You need to keep your eye on us and email and call and write and remind folks who they represent and what values they promise to take to the legislature. And one more gratuitous note, Don and I were talking to a group in Rumfelt, and it struck me that there aren't very many areas of the state that are represented by more principle-oriented and sorry for adding myself, principle-oriented and articulate senator and representative than is Broomfield. And it just occurred to me that Chris and Ted are also a representative Senate team that overlap each other. So between Highlands Ranch,
Douglas County.
Douglas County and Broomfield, you're looking at two pretty lucky areas represented in the state, because we share your vision and we're fighting for it.
We have this group until 2:30, and then we've got to get out of here because somebody else is coming in here after that. And since Senator Harvey has got to leave early, if Nancy, if you don't mind, let's go ahead and take some questions from the audience, so Senator Harvey can be part in answering those, and then at 2 o'clock we'll come back to Nancy and continue on. So at this time, let's take some questions from the audience. If we have any questions from the audience. Okay. I knew it wouldn't take much, Broderick.
Okay, I know it's sometimes embarrassing to talk about the elephants in the living room, but what about the article that was in the Denver Post regarding the issue for you regarding Dick Wadhams? I mean, can you address what was stated about, what you said about and what he said?
There's an elephant in the room?
Well, I'm just saying that this is an issue that a lot of us have read about within the last 12 hours or so, about the, what you said that he hadn't really come up with a $600,000 debt or something like that. I'm just wondering, because you're running for chair, and I didn't get to see you before.
Honestly, I'd rather not talk about state chair issues here. This is a legislative wrap-up.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. This is about the legislation. So I understand the concern about the question. But if we have legislative questions, and that was definitely a question, but make sure you have a question and not a comment. Jen.
Yes, this is to pertain more to the House, and I know both sides have done some really great things. I'm very concerned about what's going on with our House leadership right now, and they're supporting socialist, regulated, heavy bills. I can't believe that our own are sponsoring such, and that they're not putting to some type of kill committee. Could you please verify exactly what the WHIP report is? I understand it is a, quote, task list, and why there's no, quote, unquote, kill committee, or all these bills aren't being killed. And maybe, Senator Harvey, you're not the person to answer this. It might be better for the House. I don't know. But those are two very big concerns that I'd like to be addressed.
Go ahead, Representative Holbert, please.
Appreciate the question. Maybe taken in reverse order, the idea of a kill committee, I guess just sort of traditional legislative speak, that when you have a majority, the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate, if a bill is just particularly unacceptable to the leadership, the Speaker and the President of the Senate have the absolute control as to where a bill is assigned. We do not allow in Colorado caucus block voting, so I cannot be told how to vote on a bill. So when a bill is assigned to a committee, for instance, in the Senate, you have Senator Raleigh-Heath from Boulder, a very safe district, Senator Bob Bacon from Fort Collins, a very safe district, and I believe a term-limited member, and Senator Betty Boyd from Jefferson County here. I think she does need to run again, but again, what they perceive, she is term-limited, excuse me. So you have three people who are not likely to be looking for re-election in safe districts, and they can sort of toe the line for a caucus agenda. The Senate has a greater majority than the House. Our majority in the House is 1 seat, so the numerical advantage that we have on our committees is 1. So you will not find that clear distinction of being able to just kill or pass in the House, because we're only dealing with one person on that committee fading and agreeing with the bill. So you won't find that as stark in the House just because our majority is more narrow than that the Democrats hold in the Senate. I would say that we do receive encouragement from leadership. We identify bills that are particularly out of step, out of line with our agenda. And as far as Jen used the phrase "whip report," we receive a synopsis of legislation that's coming through to keep track, but that is a description of what the bill does. And for instance, when a bill has come through a committee, we get to look there. It went to this committee, and the vote was 4-3, and these people voted for it, and those people voted against it. There's nothing on that report that says we want you to vote this way or that way. That's not allowed. No one can tell me how to vote, and no one is responsible for my vote other than me.
So are all the bills on the whip report, or selected bills on the whip report?
Every bill that comes before the caucus is on that report.
Thank you.
And I would refrain from calling it a whip report. It is a leadership. It is the whip's job. So maybe you can infer that it is just from one person, but it is a history of the bill. And again, we get vote counts on that from committees and what committees it was assigned to. But it's specifically against the law for leadership to say we must all vote this way. That we can't do. So I think it's easy outside of the caucus, outside the legislature, to say, oh, there's this kind of maneuvering going on. But I think I could probably go back and show you, for instance, on SCR 1, the changing of the access to the Constitution. I was a no vote. The majority leader was a no vote. Representative Beezley was a no vote. And the Speaker was a sponsor of that bill and definitely wanted yes votes on that. But I think we can show you where there's not block, totalitarian voting going on.
Representative Beezley, want to follow up?
Yeah, just very briefly, and a couple things. Number one, in terms of having the majority, I think it's important to understand that the Republicans that are in majority leadership right now have never been a majority. So there is a little bit of time to figure out, what does it actually mean to be in the majority, and how do you provide that leadership? And for me, I can say that my experience, with, for example, the Speaker has been very gracious, and I'm one of those guys that stepped up first and voted 62-1 against this bill. And yet he was very gracious to me about that. So, I think the leadership has to find their footing and their groove, and there are times when you want to try to figure out how you're going to manage that House majority so that you can do the most effective things and achieve the goals that, by and large, I think we all would agree with. Or there are going to be things that the leadership or somebody else doesn't like. But again, at the end of the day, what they say to us is, hey, this is what we think about something, but vote your conscience. Vote, make your decision. I have not had my arm twisted once. I've had heated conversations with people about things. I always give my fellow Republicans the courtesy of a conversation before I vote against them, because I think you need to. I think you need to have that sense of team camaraderie, but also mean that sense of pride and independence and sense of principle. And I'm a freshman, so I'm figuring out my own mode and how I go through these processes in leadership. And I think that, by and large, I would suggest that they've done a pretty good job. And do I agree with everything every day? No. And sometimes that's reflected in my votes. And I'm willing to do that. And they've always been very gracious in that respect to me. So.